Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today's video is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little less scripted than I normally do, and maybe a little bit more pessimistic. But I want to talk about why I feel the fashion industry is so broken and why I think our future is going to be so different from what we've got used to. And this is kind of part of a little series I'm doing on my channel about fashion's biggest issues. I've done one on supply chains and I've done one on communicating sustainability. So watch those after if you're interested. But let's get into it because I have a lot of thoughts to get out. So like I've said at the beginning of every video in this series, it feels like fashion is trying to fix a broken system rather than create a new one that inherently works. And I really want to explain what I mean when I say broken system. Fashion used to be an art form. We used to value it on the same level as paintings and sculptures. People used to spend money on clothing that was beautiful and embroidered or, good quality and sturdy. And it feels like we've lost that now. It feels like fashion is no longer an art form and it's just become a slave to capitalism. Brands have to put shareholders and the interests of shareholders above all else, above the quality of their clothing, above pleasing consumers, above the planet. And that's meant we're inundated with cheap quality clothing. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like nobody really likes fashion anymore. It feels like as consumers, we're stuck in the middle of this issue. I think a lot of people are confused when it comes to sustainability because we're being told so many different things all the time. On the one hand, you have fast fashion brands and ultra fast fashion brands like Shein pumping out new styles, constantly selling us trends and microtrends and telling us we need this new item. And on the other hand, you have influencers and legislators and sustainable brands telling us that we need to slow down, that we need to value our clothing more. I also feel like all of us consumers are being overwhelmed by choice all the time. Whether this is a deliberate tactic by brands to sell us more or to lull us into a false sense of security about how bad fast fashion is for the environment, I don't know. But brands have a mass inventory problem. They know they're making too much, and yet they continue to churn out thousands of styles daily. I can go into a store with 100 choices and feel like I haven't seen anything, feel like there's nothing that I want to buy, nothing that suits me, because I'm overwhelmed by the sheer volume and the sheer sameness every time I do. If you go into a Zara store, it's just thousands of cheap quality items staring back at you and nothing of value, nothing that really screams fashion. The amount of choice and overproduction is so overwhelming. It's literally choking fashion. Brands are suffering from it, consumers are suffering from it, yet we're not really doing anything about it. Brand sustainability plans never address their overproduction levels. It's always about mitigating them or cutting down or changing the materials, but never about reducing what they're creating. And that to me is fixing a broken system. I think also you can see this in fashion months. It feels like no one really pays attention to runways anymore. I know that I used to be obsessed with them and now I barely notice if a brand has put on a show. I think they've lost relevancy. Social media used to be flooded with runway shows. I just don't think we have that anymore. I think we come away from fashion weeks and we can't distinguish one brand's offering from another. They're all too focused on inviting the right celebrities to their shows and not enough about fashion as an art form and expressing their own style. My last kind of example is people in the industry themselves. I think a lot of other influencers have spoken time and time again about how they're tired of feeling like they're shouting into a void, that they can go on and on about sustainability, but Zara and H&M and Shein continue to trash the planet with their cheap polyester. I know that a few journalists have covered this same sentiment in sustainability professionals in the industry. People who maybe make up their one-person team of sustainability at a major fashion brand and have left because it's not good for their mental health. They have too much strain. They have too much of a mountain to climb to get shareholders' approval to actually make change. Not to mention, we're constantly seeing real life examples of how bad fast fashion is for our planet. We're We're almost constantly seeing headlines about a new landfill filled with clothes that can be seen from space, or how we're producing so much clothing that it has to be burnt. This is all evidence of our broken fashion system. I don't think anyone actually enjoys fashion anymore, and we need to do more to change it. One recent example that I'll give of brands trying to fix a broken system is the Better Cotton initiative. And I've spoken a bit about this on this channel, so I'm not going to really go into it. But I do want to talk about why this is indicative of a broken system. Brands relying on a third party to source organic cotton was always going to invite corruption and greed. Better Cotton initiative was servicing so much of the industry. They were responsible for a massive chunk of fashion sustainable materials because brands don't want to be the ones to source it themselves. How can we rely on a third-party system when it gets inundated with work, and at the same time, the fashion industry doesn't want to invest in these sustainable solutions? Of course, it's going to be liable to corruption. I want to talk about how I think the future of fashion is going to be different based on the fact that I don't think the industry can last much longer at this rate. I think it might collapse. And whether that's going to be consumer-led or brand-led, I don't know. But I want to talk about what it might mean. We've spoken a bit about trends and how consumers feel overwhelmed trying to keep up with them, and brands are bending over backwards to keep up with them and churn out new styles to pad that bottom line even more. But I think this is going to be the first thing to collapse, and potentially the next trend is going to be slowing down, almost an anti-fashion movement. I know there's already pockets of this on the internet. It's become less and less niche as people have realized they don't want to do the rat race of fast fashion anymore. But I think we've yet to see it become a mass trend, and I think this is what was going to happen eventually. I've made up this word called mass hyper-nichety, and the way I see it is that everyone is going to become so focused on their individual style and standing out from the crowd. Wouldn't it be great if everything was one of a kind in our wardrobes, that we weren't relying on other people's style sense to dress ourselves? Our clothing could be one of a kind, made to order, or made by ourselves, or upcycled in some way. You know, you could still buy a mass-produced garment if you want to, but maybe you embroider it, maybe you add patches, maybe you just make it slightly different. You could dye it, for instance, just to help you differentiate from others and make fashion your own. I think we've almost started to see this with microtrends. This is almost like a stepping stone from mass trends to hyper-nichety. Microtrends feel like people want to look different from the masses, but they still want to be told what's cool. And I completely get that. And I think this is where brands could really find their footing. Brands could be able to offer customization as part of their service. They could provide you almost with a blank slate in the form of, I don't know, a denim jacket, and then offer you all of these different styles and customization pieces. And then when you walk away, you are so much happier with the product because it really screams you, and brands have made a little bit more money in this customization process to pad their bottom lines. Maybe it wouldn't completely recoup the losses they'd feel if fast fashion died, but it would be a step in the right direction. Not only does mass hyper-nichety feel like the better option for consumers, it could also work for brands if they let it. They will be much more compliant with legislation and sustainability because overproduction wouldn't really exist anymore. Like I've said on this channel countless times, overproduction is one of the biggest issues the industry faces today, and cutting that out could see rapid results towards brands becoming more sustainable. I'm not sure how to quantify it, but you can bet that it would have the same impact as them doing 5 or 6 other sustainability initiatives. Brands would also have a lack of inventory since everything is being made to order or customized. They would be buying less items or on a one-to-one basis, and it would completely get rid of those inventory problems that they're all moaning about right now. It could also mean that brands start scaling down with their suppliers and working with them more to really build a connection, which could solve the issue of sweatshops. If brands are more involved in their supply chain, then they're more likely to invest in it, and we're less likely to see wage exploitation and unsafe working conditions. I feel like all of this together would almost decouple fashion from on consumerism. Fashion would go back to being an art form, go back to being a method of expression rather than trying to fit in with the masses. I know it's not a perfect system. I know there's probably flaws in my plan, but I think it's definitely a better solution than what brands are trying to pull off now. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this, about whether you think mass hyper-nichety could be the next trend or not. It's a silly word, I know. We could just call it slow fashion, but either way, whether you guys can see this being the future of fashion or not. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and have a lovely week. I'll speak to you really soon. Bye.